What's up, everybody? I'm Metal Nick,
I'm Jeff Grindstoffer.
and welcome to episode number 41 of Vinyl Bang. Jeff, do you want to introduce today's guest?
Today's episode, we have the one and only Albert Mudrian from Decibel Magazine. All right.
Wow. I didn't know there'd be applause.
There usually
in
is,
rehearsal.
Whenever we have the special guests, they get the applause, Albert. So,
Okay,
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Albert is responsible for the best metal magazine out there, Decibel Magazine. And as we mentioned a few episodes ago, when you subscribe to it, you get a flexi disc in every issue. So makes it even worth more to subscribe to that magazine, or just pick up one if you can. But Albert, how did that whole idea come about?
Jeez. The whole idea actually first generated, you guys will both appreciate this, especially you, Jeff. When we did a Pig Destroyer cover back in 2007 for Phantom Limb, Scott Hull thought it'd be really cool if we did a Pig Destroyer flexi disc along with that issue. So I researched flexi disc production in 2007, and there wasn't a single place on earth that did them. So
wow.
just kind of had to table that idea for a few years, and it turned out it was another grindcore friend of mine, Kevin Sharp, formerly of Brutal Truth, who put the bug back in my head a few years later, being like, it'd be really cool if Decibel did flexis or something weird like that. And I was like, man, I looked into it years ago and nothing doing. And I was like, but I'll give it another shot. And I asked around, and it was Pirates Press out in San Francisco had just purchased a machine, and was just starting out to do it. It was just like real fortuitous. So I said, hey, this is what we want to do. Do you think guys can handle it? And they're like, let's give it a shot. So naturally at that point, I didn't have any masters or any tracks, because I didn't commission anybody for this thing that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. So I asked Kevin, I'm like, are there because Brutal Truth was still active then. This is 2010. So I was like, are there any Brutal Truth songs that are unused? And he's like, well, we're going to do this split, but we could just give you the tracks. And I was like, all right, there we go. There's a Decibel Flexi 001. And it just kind of started rolling from there. Once we kind of announced that it was happening and established it, it got a little easier for me to, get bands on board to start recording tracks for it, or to give us some stuff that they've been maybe hanging on to, but most of the time they're just recording new stuff specifically for the series and for us.
That was such a brilliant way to get people to check out new bands, check out somebody they'd never heard before. Like whenever I saw the Brutal Truth was the first one, I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I have to have one. So I did the subscription, and I own the very first flexi disc, and it's a brilliant idea, man.
There's definitely a lot of people when they first got the magazine, like, what do I do with this? It's like, well, if you have a record player, it goes on that. Because this, 2010, this is kind of pre-vinyl renaissance, I think I'd say, like it was just kind of starting to happen again, but maybe not, the way it is
really
these days.
At that point. Right.
So
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Well,
so very cool. Very cool.
Yes. Thank you for that. That was awesome. We let Albert choose a bunch of records that mean something to him, and he's going to explain himself about all those tonight. So, Albert, go ahead, get started.
All right, let's start with a record that I only acquired on vinyl a few years ago. I had it on CD. I don't even know if it was pressed on vinyl back when it was originally released in 1997. It's In the Woods Omnio. It's a band that I think most people are semi-familiar with. They're a Norwegian band. Their roots are definitely in black metal, but very proggy black metal, I would say. Super progressive in like they were doing like Jefferson Airplane covers and stuff back in the 90s. And I don't know, man. I got this record. I got the CD back in 97 and I just worshiped it. It was like just kind of dark metal, but not. I'm not articulating the sound of this album well at all. There's just because it's super unique. They're a really singular band, and to me, this is like their most definitive work. But couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, Soul Cellar Records finally reissued it on vinyl because I believe they actually signed the band to the label to release new music. And I just grabbed that reissue immediately because I was like, is a record that I just loved so much and spent so much time with that I was like, I just kind of need this on this format. I need to hear this, like to have this in my possession. And sure, I'd love to get the oldest pressing of it on, I guess would have been Misanthropy Records. Because I do think there was at one point a Misanthropy vinyl pressing of it, but I don't know if it was simultaneous to the CD release in 1997, because especially mid-90s, that wasn't necessarily a thing that vinyl was being produced with
Sure.
CDs, especially for the smaller record labels. But anyway, yeah, that's our first pick, In the Woods, Omnio. If you have not heard this record, please, please, please check it out. It is for anybody who kind of appreciates kind of doomier metal, proggier metal, but with those kind of weird post Norwegian black metal undertones to it. Not like crazy like Dom Heidsgard stuff, but like really
Right.
just kind of emotive is, I guess I would I would describe it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
So
not a
one.
black metal fan at all. I'm not a black metal fan at all, but the fact that this has the proggy, doomier aspects to it, I'm intrigued. So I was just adding that to
it's
my
not a black metal record.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a black metal record on it. There might be like one howl on it at some point, and there are no blast beats. There are no, it's like the guys, the like pretty much all the vocals are clean. It's fascinating album. Just I can't say enough about it. It's a 10 out of 10. It would be a Decibel Hall of Fame inductee, but sadly, one of the members who played on it passed away probably 10, 15 years ago. So
sucks.
No, that's shitty.
So we got that.
All right.
Let's change up. Should I change up the genre here?
Sure.
Whatever you and your show,
a little
man.
more probably in line with what you boys want. All right. Well, we're gonna bounce around, and we're gonna go with this record, which I think most people are familiar with, by a band called Dismember, Like an Ever-Flowing Stream, and we need to just take a look at this because this is pure art here.
Agreed. Yeah.
These young animal blood covered Swedes. Like an ever-flowing stream. Those who have been through the battles of the early 90s CDs and LPs and cassettes would know that on some pressings, ever-flowing is one word. On other pressings, it is not. I have gone back and forth over the years as to what my go-to is if I'm going one word or two word. And for years and years, I was one word. And only recently did that start to look stupid to me. So I've now reverted back to like an ever-flowing stream. A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 word album title. So yeah, great, fantastic record. The thing about Dismember is actually all their records are good to great, and some of the latter period stuff from the 2000s is actually some of my favorite work from them. They really kind of developed their sound beyond the Gothenburg sound, or I'm sorry, beyond the Stockholm sound. And if anything, by the end there of that recording period, they were almost a synthesis of Gothenburg and Stockholm. But without giving too much away, if you are a regular Philadelphia Metal and Beer Fest attendee, file this away in your head for April. That's all I'll say about that.
Nice.
So
There you go.
Yeah. Just remember, like,
Oh, yeah.
Ever-Flowing Stream, 1991, Nuclear Blast Records. That's pressing. It is a little beat up, but you know, what are you gonna do? That's what records are meant to be played, not kept in plastic sleeves. Although the majority of mine just end up in plastic sleeves because of time. No, all right.
Great album.
Forgive me, but I do need that to yeah. I didn't think there'd be any complaints from the peanut gallery on like an Ever-Flowing Stream. To me, that's kind of indisputable. But that won't be the last indisputable death metal classic before we're done here.
Awesome.
But all right, let's change some things up. Let's go with 1983's Def Leppard Pyromania.
Oh, hell yeah.
I am guessing I'm the oldest person. I'm guessing I'm the oldest person here since I'll be 50 next year. Do I win? Am I the oldest?
Yeah.
Nick, do you want to field that question? Yes, I believe so, Albert. Yes. You don't look it. You don't look it at all. You don't look 50.
Oh no! Oh, I feel it. Trust me. But so yeah, I was born in 75. This record came out in 83. There is, for me as a young 8 and 9 year old, no band more formative and no record more important than this one. For me into a rock and metal fan and going down this godforsaken path that has led us here today to this podcast. And I know Def Leppard in a lot of people's minds is just this really kind of cheesy, bad radio rock pop band, and that's not inaccurate. But the first 3 albums from this band, they are a kick-ass, hard rock, new wave of British heavy metal band, especially in the first 2. And this one is like basically their first kind of like full-fledged pop rock album. Mm-hmm. And it's just hit after hit as far as I'm concerned. There's kind of the obvious ones everybody knows, like Photograph and Rock of Ages and Foolin'. But it start to finish, there are just no bad songs on it. There's like mini epics, like Billy's Got a Gun and Die Hard the Hunter, and then there's like kind of pseudo monster ballad like Too Late for Love. But the whole thing, man, the production is just ridiculous. The arrangements are just fully fleshed out. There's just like there's no fat on this record at all. Like all the riffs hit, all the hooks are big. And this was, growing up, getting MTV in the 80s, seeing those videos, and not long after it, I got like Twisted Sister Stay Hungry, Quiet Riot, Metal Health. It was all kind of part of the process. But this is still the one that's most near and dear to my heart, and it's the one that everyone in my family.
Yeah, it definitely is a solid album for sure.
Okay.
No,
so,
yeah,
but
that's definitely one in my early formative years of being a metalhead. That and Hysteria were I was like maybe like 88, 89 when I was starting those two records. I remember listening to a lot, and I'm not going to argue anything about that. From start to finish, it is a solid album by Romania.
I will even back maybe 33% of Hysteria.
Yeah.
I can hang with there's a lot of stuff that on Hysteria is indefensible to me, but there's also there's some great moments on Hysteria too that I think are kind of semi underrated. So, but I think we can all agree on the fact that after that, everyone should completely check out of Def Leppard. Like there's no fine post Hysteria that is remotely redeeming. So,
Fair.
all right, let's get a little more modern. And maybe this one's a little self-serving, so forgive me. But we're gonna go with an Immolation album because as I've been working for the past month or so, the fact that Decibel has just published an Immolation biography called Into Everlasting Fire, which is available for pre-order on decibelmagazine.com. It's a really amazing book written by Kevin Stewart Pankow about, I think, one of the most beloved American death metal bands ever in Immolation. But this record, I have a personal. I love all Immolation records. I own every Immolation record, but I have a little personal attachment to this one. This came out in 1990 or 2017. I'm sorry, and we put Immolation on the cover of Decibel for this with this record. It was our first Decibel cover, besides a cover for the Decibel tour back in 2013 that the band was part of with Cannibal Corpse and Napalm Death. But this really, I thought, was a kind of breakthrough record for the band in terms of people really starting to pay attention to them and really starting to take them seriously. Not just like the old guard, but a new generation of death metal fans kind of discovering this band and realizing, it's not just a logo that you would see on t-shirts. Like, this was an insanely powerful band. And this record, I don't know, man. I listened to the hell out of this thing. And it's still, I think, of the modern Immolation stuff, even though I really like the last one, Acts of God, this is the one that I reached for a lot. And when I was editing that Immolation book, I listened to this record. I just listened to all the time. I mean, I listened to every single Immolation album editing that book because we talk about everyone and it's a long ass book. So, I got to fill the hours with something. But yeah, no one should ever sleep on Immolation. They are still probably slightly underappreciated, but they want to be getting their due. Their set at our 20th anniversary show back in August of this year was one of the most ripping things I have seen in a long time. They actually played songs from their first 4 records only. So it was super tech for Immolation, and really they just smoked the place. But just a fantastic US band and a late career defining record. I hope everyone tunes into if you aren't super familiar with Immolation, or if you're an old fart who are like, oh, I only had listened to Dawn of Possession and then I checked out. Don't be an idiot. Go tune into that, and you'll be rewarded.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna agree with that statement because I'd seen them many times in the past and just was not ever sold on them. And when they were touring that particular album, I remember going to the merch table, buying that CD, and being like, wow, it changed my perspective on them. And every time I'd seen them live, I'd paid more attention to them. So you're right. I think that album definitely brought a lot of attention to them, and I'm certainly one of those people that was sold on that record.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I also the 2013 tour with Cannibal Corpse and Napalm Death. That was whenever I met Steve for the first time and filmed him for the very first time for Sick Drummer magazine, and that was my introduction to the band. It was just like, oh my God, these guys are good.
Mm.
You know, and I've seen them so many times since then. And as far as being underappreciated, they are absolutely underappreciated. They do not get the credit they deserve at all. Phenomenal bands.
I think it's starting to happen. I think people are starting to figure it out, and it's pretty wild for a band with like a 36-year history that never broke up. You know, they didn't get to play the reunion card. Like, they've just been at it the whole time, and it's really cool. It's really cool to see it happening for them. I'm a big fan of them. People, they're salt of the earth human beings. You couldn't ask for a better group of people than those dudes, and seeing them have success, having this late career success is like super edifying. Really, just couldn't happen to a better bunch of people who completely deserve it for the work they've put in. So yeah, Immolation Atonement, get that any way you can. All right, what the hell are we doing here? All right, let's go back to the 90s for a second, because I'm going to go back to the 90s. Okay, this is an interesting one. This is for a lot of people who are into the most ridiculous funeral doom imaginable. This is a band called Thurgothon, or I have also heard pronounced Thurgothon, but I've been calling it Thurgothon for 30 years, so they're just Thurgothon. That released one record only. They are to funeral doom what Repulsion is to grindcore, especially also in terms of tempo. This is really some of the slowest, most morose, just utterly devoid of hope you will ever hear from a band. They were Finnish. They did one demo before this. I believe they broke up before this record actually came out in 1994. This version that I have here, this was the first version that got pressed onto vinyl, and it was many years later. In fact, it was about a decade later in 2004. It was on a label called Paniac Records, which I have never heard of. There's 500 copies. This one is allegedly number 428, hand numbered on the back. It's since repressed. I don't remember if you guys remember a label called Seventh Rule that was around, I'd say maybe a decade or so ago. They put out a lot of like kind of good angular kind of noise rock and post metal and stuff. And I ended up, I don't know, having some conversation with the guy who ran the label, and basically, we were talking about extreme doom and stuff. And I was like, you need to check this out. And I turned him onto the record, and he's like, oh, this is great. He's like, I wish somebody would release this on vinyl. And I was like, well, I've got contact information for the band. So, if you want, I can hook you up. And, to my knowledge, there's obviously nothing that's in print at the moment from Thurgothon. So I hooked them up, and they ended up talking, and lo and behold, on Seventh Rule Records in looks like 2013 here, as the copyright goes, they did a deal with the band and released this record on vinyl in America. And this is the copy of that. This is the Paniac Records version from about 10 years earlier. And then the original CD version was on Avant-Garde Music, and a label in Italy, which had a lot of doom and black metal stuff in the 90s. It was run by a dude named Roberto, who had another weird, obscure kind of post-doom band called Monumento. I'm guessing that the grind fans aren't big into the funeral doom, but I got to bring everything to the party here.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And I love hearing stuff like this. Everything that makes Albert Mudrian. This is what I want to hear. It's awesome.
stuff that's kind of all over the place. Yeah. Well, there's more. All right. So what do we got here? Let's change things up. Let's do something a lot different. Let's do a rock band. This is the Afghan Wigs. They're from Cincinnati, Ohio. They are still around today. They broke up probably in the late 90s, like every band, and reformed maybe 10, 15 years ago, like every band. But this was a record I got in 1993. It's called Gentleman. And this band, this is their major label debut on Elektra. They were signed to Sub Pop before that. They had 2 records out on Sub Pop, maybe 3, 2 or 3, maybe 2. I don't remember. I'd have to look. I think it's 2 actually. And it's just really like this is a concept record more or less about a relationship that fails because someone has all kinds of nasty addictions. And it's, I was 18 when I heard it, and I hadn't experienced anything that extreme in my life, but there was just something, it just was like, it was a different kind of breakup album, I guess I would say. It's like kind of a breakup album through just like a person breaking down and falling apart. And it's kind of a harrowing listen. But it still resonates with me. It turned 31 like 2 days ago or something. It came out
awesome.
in 1993, like I said. And it's just celebrating its 31st birthday. But yeah, and there's other Afghan Wigs records I also really like. The follow-up to this, Black Love, is good. And some of their post-reunion material is actually pretty good too. But they were one of those bands that, they had like some mild success on the heels of Nirvana. Not that they sounded anything like Nirvana or had anything to do with that scene, but just the way that the music industry worked in 1993, post Nevermind, where pretty much anything that was, considered slightly left of center could have a chance to get signed and released. And they put out at least 3 records on major labels, and I believe they're back on Sub Pop now. But yeah, just fantastic band. Frontman Greg Dooley has an incredibly powerful voice. They're influenced by a lot of Motown and R&B stuff, but the way it gets interpreted in a loud rock format is really super unique, and one of my all-time favorites. Really kind of a arresting cover photo also. Great band.
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
always remember seeing their name. They played a local radio music festival that would happen in DC a lot when I was a kid. And I always remember seeing that name and just laughing, like, that's a great name, Afghan Wigs.
Back in 2013, whenever I was driving a pig destroyer around between St. Louis and Chicago, JR had introduced me to Afghan Wigs, and they're a great band. And even like whenever we had him on the show a couple months ago, he was reiterating his love for the Afghan Wigs, and they are a great band that I totally missed out on in the 90s. And I don't know if it was because of the whole Nirvana, obvious fan of Nirvana, but I don't know if it's because of them that I didn't listen to them, or if I just overlooked them, or whatever it was. But 20 years later, or 30 years later, I guess, getting back into them, and yeah, great band, absolutely.
I guess JR being a fan isn't that shocking or that crazy after all. All right. So from the Afghan Wigs, we're gonna take an odd turn to Napalm Death, and a record from 2006 called smear campaign, and I I still have the plastic on this one because I wanted to preserve the Decibel edition sticker that is on this because I don't know, this was maybe 2010. I'm sorry, not 2010. It's maybe 2019 or 2020. We were approached by Century Media about working together on some reissues of two Napalm records. I believe there was 4 in total, and what we ended up doing with it was we did these special Decibel editions of the record that included like this little like leaflet fold out, which what we did was we reprinted the coverage of Napalm Death for that particular record that ran in Decibel when the record was released. So this is the story that I wrote in 2006 about smear campaign, when back in ancient times when record labels had money to fly people around. Century Media actually flew me to Wales while they were recording this album at Full Studios. So, it was really cool for me to go in there, and I'd known those guys for years before that, but to be in there while they were in the studio to kind of experience that record as it was coming together and kind of see how those dudes were living it and experiencing it was really cool. I was super psyched to cover it in Decibel at the time, but then when we got this opportunity to revisit and repurpose this content and have it included in this Decibel edition of the record, just turned into a really cool little piece for us and for me as an Uber fan, with Napalm being one of my favorite bands ever, and Smear Campaign being, I think, a record that I think everybody really liked at the time, but maybe forgot a little bit about because Napalm have been so consistent for the past 20 years of banging out really, really good records. But that album still really, really stands up. I think it's one of my favorites. And yeah, that's my Spear Campaign story. So that's why I went with that one. Literally could have pulled any Napalm Death off the shelf and it probably would have worked, but that one I thought was a little more interesting just because I was a very small part of it.
Well, sure, dude. I mean, that's awesome that you were there with them while they were recording it, dude. That's an awesome story. I
was much younger. I think I still had a version of this hat back then, though. So, so I was on brand, even though I was in Wales. All right, so now I'm going to do the rare segue from one record and artist to another that actually makes sense. So prepare yourselves. Okay. It's going to be also another fairly self-serving venture, but regardless of my affiliation with this release, this is my favorite album of whatever year it came out. I think it was 2023. This is Venomous Concept, Good Ship Lollipop, which disclaimer, I have to state that I released this album on Decibel Records, so so I might not there might be more objective takes on this than mine, but the reason I put it out was because those dudes, and I guess I should preface this with, for anybody who doesn't know, Venomous Concept's a band that features Kevin Sharp, ex Brutal Truth, on vocals, Shane Embry on bass and guitars, John Cook from Napalm Death also on guitars, and at the time, at least on this recording, his name is escaping me, but it was the drummer who was the original drummer of Cancer. And I got to look it up now because it's really going to bother me if I fuck this up. Carl Stokes, duh. But last I heard, Dave Whitty was actually playing drums with them now. So they're just continuing to find awesome drummers. Anyway, this album, Venomous Concept, for people who were familiar with them, they were kind of a punky grindcore band for their first like 3 or 4 records. And then they made this album, which is a just straight up rock record, which sounds more like Husker Du than it does SOB. And it was just so infectious that when those guys sent it to me and they were looking for a label, I was just like, this is so good, man. Somebody is going to put this out. So I reached out, and they were having trouble because they didn't want to do it on Season of Mist, and Season of Mist didn't think it was right for them, as they had released like the last couple Venomous before that. So I just kind of reached out to a bunch of my friends in the industry, and I was like, hey, do you guys, label A, label B, label C, do you want to release this album? I'll send it to you. It's awesome. And everybody agreed it was awesome, but nobody felt like they knew what to do with it. So at some point it was either Shane or Kevin who just asked me, like, do you want to put it out? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we put up a pre-order, I guess it was the end of 2022, and put it out in the beginning of last year. And I think we did like a cool glow in the dark vinyl run or some shit with it at some point. And, other, like, I think this one, I can't remember which version this is that I have here. There's like a lollipop pink one. This one's a weird, like crazy, some kind of weed haze. I don't know what's going on, but it's pretty rad. But anyway, this was my favorite album of last year, and it's sad we couldn't cover it in Decibel because it would be a conflict of interest. I wasn't comfortable with saying, oh yes, we released this album and it's the best album of this year. Go figure. So I was a little sad that we were unable to cover it, but that was also the kind of deal that I told the band. I was like, we will get behind it. We'll promote it. We'll run ads for it in the magazine. And like, I'll get a bunch of other publications that I know to cover it and write about it, but we can't be in Decibel, and they were cool with that. But yeah, that's how that album came to be. Are you guys, I mean, I know you have to be familiar with Venomous Concept, but I don't know if you heard a good shit.
I have been into Venomous Concept since the beginning. Whenever Buzz was in the band, I have followed them pretty regularly. And that album, I have a copy of it, but I don't know what it is, and I'd have to scroll all the way across the floor and everything. But it's great out. It is definitely different from the earlier stuff. It was very well received on my end. But yeah, great album for sure.
Cool. Nick, are you in or what?
I've heard them before. I don't own that record or any of their albums, but I am fully aware of who they are. I remember. I feel like they played Death Fest. If not, I'm thinking of one of the other side bands with Brutal Truth and Napalm Death. But
they played Death Fest in, I think it was 2009. Because I remember them in the Sonar room, and it was the first time I'd ever seen Shane Embry playing guitar, and it looked really fucking weird. I remember thinking that. But all right. Yeah, no, I remember that vividly. That was 2009. But speaking of Maryland Death Fest, these guys are going to be playing this record next year at MDF. This band called Obituary. This little record called Cause of Death, which, if I can get up close to where the camera is, light ring notwithstanding, you can see the old Road Racer Records logo. And of course, the infamous Stop the Madness anti-drug campaign, which was co-opted by a few people over the years and turned into something less wholesome. But anyway, yes, Obituary, Cause of Death. This is the pivotal death metal album for me. It was one of the first death metal records I ever heard. And it was one of the first extreme music records just really changed the way I thought about extreme music. Like I didn't realize something could be as heavy. I remember a friend telling me about this album before I'd heard it, and his sales pitch was they were so heavy they didn't have real words. And I was like, okay, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but I'm intrigued. So yeah, so this was great. Like I said, they're going to play this all at MDF next year to celebrate the 35th anniversary. But those of you who were at Decibel Metal and Beer Fest Philly in 2019, you've already seen them play all of Cause of Death because they did it there for the first time, and it was fucking awesome. So I have no doubt that when they do it again at Maryland Death Fest next year, it'll be equally as fucking awesome. And Obituary are just great band. Again, I honestly forgot about this until this moment, but in more self-serving, self-promotional stuff, we actually released the Obituary biography turned inside out back in, this is 2021 or 22. I can't remember. Everything is a blur, but this is a great book on a great band. Super proud that we got to do this, do it right, and do it right by those dudes. But yeah, just a absolute classic US death metal band and an absolute one of a kind barn burner of a record, Cause of Death. There it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Love Obituary, man. They're a great live band. It translates well live from the studio stuff. Great band for sure.
Every time, man. Every time. Like you can't. I've never seen them play a bad set. They're so much fun live. There isn't a death metal band like them live. Like people just smile when they play. And that's
right.
the proper reaction to that music live. It's just fantastic.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. So the last one I have pulled here. It's a record that everybody is familiar with, a band that everybody's familiar with. But part of the reason that I had to pull it was because of the hype sticker that's on this reissue. Now you'll see this record is completely sealed, and there's a reason for that. It's because, and this is something that happened completely unbeknownst to me, that Metallica, I mean, I knew they were reissuing, their back catalog through their own blackened imprint, but this hype sticker on this version, which I think is probably like, this is from 2016. All right, so it's a little old now, but from this version, the hype sticker, if I can find the camera, you will see. Here, I'm very bad at this. There we go. You'll see remastered for the first time, #1 thrash metal album of all time, Decibel Magazine. Now, I can't express how fucked up that is. That that this record, which is, I mean, this is Metallica Ride the Lightning. This is a record for me. I'm sorry. I know everybody loves Master of Puppets, but the middle of that record is boring as shit. Sorry. I don't know what to tell you. This record all the way through just rips hit after hit after hit. And I the fact that they, pulled our ranking when we ranked them the best thrash metal albums of all time in some special issue years ago, and they put it right there on the cover. I had to acquire this. A friend of mine actually found it in a store and bought it and sent it to me. Because I had heard that this existed, but I hadn't actually seen one. And he grabbed it for me and sent it to me because it's actually a friend of mine that I went to high school with. So, somebody we were listening to, Metallica, in 1990, and he saw this and he was just like, holy shit. So obviously I don't need to talk about how good and important Ride the Lightning is. I think everybody understands that. I would hope anybody who is spending any time listening to this or watching this doesn't need to be sold hard on Ride the Lightning. Perhaps you can debate merits of it as the quote, #1 thrash metal album of all time, quote, Decibel Magazine. But, you know, for me, it is. And to see that sticker on this piece of vinyl is just insane.
Oh, that is awesome,
So,
dude. That is beyond
I figure,
awesome. Like, yeah, that's like, has anybody from the band or any representatives like reached out to you like since then, or like has there been any correlation between Metallica and?
No, not because I mean we've worked with them over the years. Like we've done a couple covers. In fact, one of the craziest covers we ever did was in 2016 for I guess it was the Hardwired record, where for our cover shoot we had them recreate the cover of the Garage Days Revisited EP.
I remember.
So
that.
they were
Okay.
all they, you know, as you know, and like I mean that in itself was wild. Like we'd done some stuff like that in the past. Like there was in 2016 we had Slayer recreate the back cover photo of Rain and Blood as the front cover of Decibel. So there was a you know some stuff like that has happened in the past. Asked Metallica to do something like that, and they're like, okay, yeah, cool, let's do it. Like, all right. But the hype sticker is a wild thing because I didn't know it was happening until it was just out there in the world and somebody saw it. So that made it even cooler, you know, because it's just like just one day it was there.
Very cool.
So yeah, those are some of my favorite albums, and hopefully some interesting stories behind them.
Definitely.
Not all of them, but at least some of them.
No, that was great for sure. There were some bangers in there, and I'll argue with you about Master Puppets Ride the Lightning some other time. But no, that I like that. That's great.
Yeah, save it.
That's good to have your magazine on the hype sticker. Of course, that's got to be a huge accomplishment for sure.
Yeah, that's tough. You know, when you look back at like 20 years of things we've done, that's one of those little like didn't see that coming moments. So
sure.
You know, it's pretty cool.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, this would be a good time to end it. Thank you very much, Albert, for your time this week, and thank you everybody for tuning in. And we will catch you all next week.
Just Albert again. Thank you so much for doing this with us. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and can't wait to hang out again in person, man. Can't wait to see you again, Albert.
Yeah, come out to Philly in April, and gentlemen, anytime. Appreciate you guys having me on. Hopefully it wasn't too boring for anybody who's watching, and cheers.
Not at all.
Cheers.
All right. See you guys.